And welcome to Behind the Numbers. My name is Dave Bookbinder, and this is the program that goes beyond the data to explore people, stories, and insights that drive business success. Thank you all for joining us today. They say that all business is personal, so creating a culture of connection is kind of a big deal. We're going to be talking about that today with Morag Barrett, who is the founder of SkyeTeam, and her latest book is called You, Me, We: Why We All Need a Friend at Work. Hey, Morag, welcome to Behind the Numbers.
Hi, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what SkyeTeam is doing.
Okay, so who am I? Well, I'm an English woman abroad. I live in Colorado, have done for the last 20 years, and I am passionate about how business gets done. And having spent 15 years with the numbers in finance in the UK, navigating my way through cash flow forecast, business plans galore, and all sorts of ratios, I realized there was a missing link, and that is the culture of connection that we're going to talk about today. And so when I'm not doing that, when I'm not working with leaders around the world, I am the mother of now 3 6-foot-tall men and also a ballroom dancer and a classical musician.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that, and interesting background. And I love the idea that you spend a lot of time in the numbers, and like myself and many others, understand that it's more than just the numbers. But let's talk a little bit about the book first and foremost, because we're going to unpack a number of things that are in the book and also the broader concepts that inspired you. But tell us about the book, You, Me, We. What inspired you to write it, and what will folks glean from reading it?
Well, the book, You, Me, We: Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One, I actually wrote with my 2 best friends at work, Eric Spencer and Ruby Vesely. And it's the sequel, it's the prequel, it's the sister book to my first book, Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships. And they go hand in hand. Cultivate is the strategy. It introduces what I call the relationship ecosystem and the 4 relationship dynamics that we all experience in our work lives, but in our whole lives. And those 4 dynamics are your allies, your best friends at work, the colleagues who will cheer you on when things are going well, but also give you the kick in the pants when you need, and maybe that tough feedback you need to hear. Then you have supporters. They're your fair weather friends. They're fun to work with, great when things are going well. But when things start to get rocky, it's crickets. They disappear. And then as you go around to the dark side of that model, we talk about rivals. Jekyll and Hyde, when it suits their agenda, they're all for you. Yay, go Dave. And when it doesn't, they're against you. And that uncertainty can cause us to hesitate in how we show up in our meetings and our business conversations. And then the 4th dynamic is the adversary, the continually toxic butting heads. There's friction every day. And You, Me, We talks specifically about that ally mindset. The how do you show up as a colleague that others want to work with, but also not as the doormat where I just go, oh, yes, Dave, whatever you want, Dave. How do I also show up as a friend for me? How do I set the guardrails? How do I communicate my own needs and expectations so that ultimately you and I can be better together?
Yeah, so the ally mindset is an important component in all of this and how we think about things and how we show up. But when you talk about those we'll call them the negative ones, the rivals and the adversaries, how do you reconcile, showing up to be your best when you've got folks who are maybe trying to torpedo you?
So that's the sad news. We've had more than 1,000 leaders who've completed our ally mindset profile. And I invite you and everybody listening to this podcast to do the same. And you can do that at SkyeTeam, SKYE, team.cloud/you, me, we. And you'll get your full profile with recommended next steps. And from the research, from those 1,000 leaders who've taken it, there are many stats that are emerging, but 2 of the most heartbreaking statistics are that 20% of those leaders say that they have no one that they can turn to in moments of uncertainty, change, or turbulence, so no friend at work. And 67% say that their success has been undermined by the words or actions of a colleague. So if more than half of us are saying, that our success is being impacted by our colleagues, one could extrapolate and say that at any moment in time, we are either undermining or being undermined. And so when it comes back to your question about what do we do with rivals and adversaries, the first thing is to recognize that there is only a very, very small percentage of people who would wake up in the morning and revel in, ooh, can I make Dave's day a nightmare? And so as much as we may perceive that others are undermining us or that they're out to get us, the first thing is to recognize that sometimes it's just misaligned goals. It is a difference in style, and it's the fact that we've not had a conversation to set expectations that is causing that friction to happen. The second part is if you are trapped in a working relationship that is toxic and stressful and undermining you and your success, then you need to take the first steps to change it, ask for what you need. And if that isn't working, then move to a different team or ultimately move to a different organization. You don't have to stay trapped in that toxic relationship.
Yeah. And I've often told people, I learned this the hard way, but assume good intent. A lot of times the perceptions of the adversary is really just a communication glitch. And if you assume that their intentions are good and explore a little deeper, a lot of times you can uncover the disconnect. But
Yes.
let's talk about the ally mindset. So how do we, besides taking the assessment, what else can we do to understand what our mindset is, and how do we strengthen our professional reputation as an ally?
So the first thing is to think about, well, what is that leadership legacy that you are aspiring to create and leave? And not just when you retire or when you move on from this organization, just even think about what's the impact you want to have today. And think about the 3 words that would describe how you would hope others would describe what it's like to work with you. So, for example, Dave, when you think about the people who work and know you, what 3 words come to mind that you would hope are top of their list?
Well, I hope that they would say collaborative. I would hope
Hmm.
they say good natured, and I would hope that they would say technically proficient. How's that?
There you go. Knows his stuff. I
You
love
put me on the
it.
spot.
I know. Well, there you go. But here's the thing, it's a bit like our values exercises that many of us have been asked to do at various times in our careers. If you can't articulate it, how do you know whether or not you're living up to that? And at the end of the day, the first thing you can do is, did I do my best to deliver those 3 things to the people I'm working with and meeting each and every day? The second challenge, though, is to go and ask folks, what 3 words come to mind when you think of me? When you see me at my best, what is it I'm doing? And also, when you see me at my not best, what's getting in the way of my success? And then using that information to understand to what extent is there a gap between your intent, I want to be seen as collaborative and technically competent, and then the words that others use to describe you. Because then the ally mindset is all about the practices, the behaviors that will close that gap and more likely leave you with that legacy that when you leave the room, it's a sigh of disappointment of, ah, Dave's gone, as opposed to, oh, thank goodness, Dave's gone.
So I worked with a coach, I guess probably more than about a decade or so ago, and one of the first exercises we did was a 360 assessment. It was to see
Hmm.
feedback very similar to what you just described here. And he blasted out this survey to people that I've known casually, people that I've known forever, and up and down the food chain, if you will, clients, prospects, referral partners. And the feedback was just absolutely mind blowing as to how people perceived me based on the way we were interacting, the purpose of our interactions. But there were absolutely recurring themes there that were super enlightening, which better helped me not only to understand how to show up and how to behave, but also from a positive standpoint, how to articulate some of those things to clients. Because
Yes.
it's one thing for me to say, "Oh, I'm going to be the best person you've ever worked with," and who's going to buy that? But when you're able to say, "Others have said it's great to work with me," that's a really good phenomenon.
Absolutely. I'm actually coaching 2 leaders at the moment and just completing those initial 360 processes. And the way I do it is a phone call or a Zoom call with key leaders. And it gives you that outside in skinny, because all of us have some level of self-confidence of how we're showing up. I can test it by just asking a room of leaders, hands up if you're an above average driver, i.e., are you an above average leader? And most of us are going to say, I'm doing okay. But what that 360 does is it provides that outside in perspective, the passengers in your car, the team that are on the ride along with you. And are they having fun on that journey, or are they holding on for dear life and screaming blue murder? So those 360 tools can be a powerful way of getting that insight. And at the leadership levels at which I'm working, which are usually established, successful leaders, they're not going to bring huge red flags that mean a 180 on your personality or how you show up at work. I liken it more to the Olympics. I mean, athletes work with coaches their whole lives. This is about rounding out the edges. It's about increasing your toolkit so that you can flex in the moment and shave off the hundredths of a second that get you from a silver medalist leader to a gold medalist.
Yeah, really good stuff there. Boundaries is a topic that we talk about a lot and read about a lot, especially at work. How do boundaries fit in with being an ally at work?
Oh, these are core. In fact, I recently wrote an article, you can find it on my LinkedIn profile, about boundaries, because I think the misunderstanding about boundaries is that they're about keeping others at bay. But boundaries really are about what I need. They're for me. The key is I need to articulate them as the line in the sand, but then I get to choose whether or not the request that you make that might be over that boundary, am I going to let it lie, or am I going to just say, okay, on this occasion, I'm going to let it bend? And it ties in because the foundational practice for having an ally mindset is abundance and generosity.
Yeah.
How do you look at life? How do you look at success? How do you look at the operating system for the world? Is it one of abundance, or is it one of scarcity? And if it's scarcity, we tend to hoard information. It's a me first mindset. But with abundance and generosity, I'm now curious about you as a human being, but I'm also curious about how I can help you to be successful. Now, this turns out to be my default operating system for the world. And where it connects with boundaries is that when taken to extreme, when it becomes an overplayed strength without having boundaries, I can find myself saying yes to everybody else, and me and my needs become deprioritized. So boundaries are vital in terms of the health of our professional working relationships, and understanding, is the friction because we're at loggerheads, or is the friction because some implicit, unstated boundary has been crossed either by me or by you? And now what are we going to do about it to recalibrate and resolve that?
Yeah, and you actually triggered something in my memory here as you were talking about the abundance and scarcity mindset. Because early in my career, I grew up in the investment banking world, which is
Mm-hmm.
generally known to be cutthroat and somewhat toxic. And man, you talk about a scarcity environment there. That's really what it was all about. You're hoarding deals, hoarding information, because knowledge is power. Don't share it. And it was only later on that I learned to understand the abundance mindset and what that really means, and had to sort of deprogram what I was previously taught, what was indoctrinated. So when you think about this ally mindset, the abundance mindset, how do you navigate that when you're talking about different organizational hierarchy? So whether you're talking to a colleague or a boss, and does generational difference make an impact as well?
So in the work that I've done and those 1,000 leaders, it does span generations. And we're starting that longitudinal study to see, okay, are there differences by career level? Are there differences by industry? Are there differences by any demographic? And certainly what we're seeing is actually the loneliness epidemic, which even the Surgeon General, the previous Surgeon General of the US, has called an epidemic around the world, is noticeable and increases. It seems like we put up that wall. The corner office is actually one of the loneliest offices in the work in work, yes. And why does this matter? Well, we know that from other research that has been done that loneliness and disconnection actually impacts our health, our happiness, and our productivity. So this isn't just a societal need and I just need to go and hang out and have a cup of coffee with a friend. It actually impacts our ability to get the work done and deliver profitability and deliver results effectively. So there is a business need for this, and there is a personal need too. And whilst we haven't seen a change in demographics, what we do see, and what we've heard from the leaders we've worked with around the world, is how we define a friend at work and how we go about connecting with others may shift. So for those of us who are pre-pandemic, office is the place to be, there is the impression that presenteeism and the only way to make a friend at work is to be in the office together. Our research is countering that and saying that when we show up intentionally, we can equally create those deep connections through the camera and virtually. But it means that we need to create the chance encounters, the equivalent of the water cooler conversations, the space in and amongst the business for those relationships to flourish. And if there's one thing I've observed, and I even did it with you this morning, Dave, when we got on the call, is there is something about the camera that when we arrive into a Zoom meeting 10 seconds late, in my case, a minute or two late, the first thing we start doing is, oh my goodness, I'm late, I'm sorry. Whereas when we were working in the same location in an office, if you rolled in 5 minutes late to a meeting, it rarely was commented on because it was understood that along the way you stopped to make a cup of coffee, or you bumped into Fiona who said, oh, do you have a minute? And you answered that question. And then you arrive and you sat down and you shoot the breeze. There's a little bit of small talk. And then we got down to business. There was that passing time. But something about the camera, it is straight into, sorry, I'm late. Where's the project plan? What are you doing? And we're forgetting to slow down and ask, how are you doing?
Yeah, great point. And it reminds me back in the pandemic when you talk about the loneliness aspect of it. I mean, we all felt it, and there were a lot of studies about depression. But um, working at that time, being on camera, like you said, I felt that disconnect. And we had regularly scheduled meetings, and I instituted something that I called gathering time, which was we're all going to log in optionally 10 minutes prior to the start of the meeting to allow for that time, like you said, that you would normally arrive in the conference room and just shoot the breeze. Because, like you said, you're off to a shotgun start as soon as you're on camera, it seems these days. And for the record, I did not reprimand you for being late. You were perfectly
No, you
fine.
don't. You were a gentleman. We just
want
laughed about it.
just want to make sure we're all clear about that. I want to ask you about any downside about being perceived as an ally at work, because a lot of the good companies are talking about creating a family environment, and the cynics will tell you they're not really your family. They'll cut your throat in a heartbeat. And trust is a two-way street. And how do you reconcile the perceived downsides of that and showing up completely as an ally?
So I call BS on it. I mean, you think about it, that old adage, I was told it in banking, it's not personal, it's business. It isn't a dispersonal environment. In fact, the world of work, business, it is all built on relationships. It is the biggest team sport we're going to be part of. And so the politics, silos and turf wars, the masks that I have worn early in my career have, with hindsight, slowed me down. And I've seen the transformation in organizations where this concept of an ally mindset, a collegiate, trust-based team and organizational culture has literally transformed the results that people are able to get. Because instead of worrying about, oh, well, does Dave really like me? Which isn't the goal of just being a friend at work. It's not skipping through the daisies and everything's delightful. It's, does Dave have my back? And are we working to the same goal? And are we going to be held accountable to the same standards? When the doubt and the worry about that goes away, then what we see is there is a spike in collaboration, there is a spike in innovation and informed risk taking, creativity flows, and the warnings of impending disaster, the bad news of, I think this isn't going to work, or this client is starting to get frustrated. Those are raised sooner because people are not afraid of bringing bad news and worried about if they're going to get into trouble for being a minute late. They are empowered to, how can we be better together and achieve those results in a way that is fun and efficient. So it is wrong to think about having a friend at work. I hear it. Leaders will say, well, if I'm friends with Dave, what happens if I have to give him tough feedback? What happens if I have to lay him off? And I'm coaching a leader right now, and he is reorganizing his team, and he is going to have to make some changes. But what he acknowledged to me was the fact that he has those stronger relationships means that he can make those tough decisions and have those conversations in a more humane way. In a way that, is it going to be fun? No. Is it going to be upsetting for those who are impacted? Absolutely. But it is going to allow those relationships to remain somewhat intact. And the key here is, colleagues today, we may go our different paths, but chances are we're going to work again together in the future. So caring, having the connection and compassion at the human level, that is the second practice of an ally mindset, getting beyond the job title and the name badge. Understanding what makes you tick actually makes it easier to have those tough conversations when needed, and actually makes those tough conversations less frequent because we're now on the same page, because having expectations, having those feedback loops is just part of how we do business.
Yeah, and it's so important, in my view, as you mentioned, that you have these humane conversations. So many times people are growing up inside an organization. They have a friend, a buddy they hang out with, and then one gets promoted, and now the other one is reporting to the one who just got promoted, and then there's a completely different shift in the whole dynamic. Um, Big balancing act that goes on there, but underpinning everything that you just talked about really is trust. I think in
Yes,
your book, you maybe even said that trust is the secret sauce. I want you to
it
talk
is.
about that, because I talked about that in my first book, and we talk about it a lot here as really a key to innovation and success.
Yeah. And often I'll ask leaders, I say, okay, Dave, if I was to come and work with you, what would I need to do in order to prove to you that I could be trusted, that I am trustworthy? And often I'll hear from leaders, we have four questions that we know that consciously or subconsciously we're always asking about other people. The first one is, can I count on you? Can I count on you to do your job, get your stuff done, and get it to me on time so I can get my stuff done? Can I depend on you to be proactive, not just reactive? Can I depend on you to be proactive, go the extra mile, spot the typo or the error in the formula in the spreadsheet, fix it and let me know? And these are transactional. This is where my finance career kind of stopped and started. Can you hit the numbers in the cash flow forecast? But the true transformation comes with, do I care about you? That's the connection and compassion. And then, do I trust you? And then when I ask that question, what does it take to get to a yes for trust? And how long does it take? Leaders will say, oh, well, 2 years, do your job and I'll test you by giving you projects and then we'll see. But I look at that and it blows my mind at the rate of change that the industry, any business is going through right now. You haven't got 2 years to wait. You just hired me. You should have some baseline trust. So it comes back to your earlier question about boundaries. It's not blind trust, but it's trust with guardrails. It's asking me, hey, Morag, how have you approached this before in your past company? Great, go do that here. Or, great, we do it slightly different in this organization. Here's why. Here's what I expect. Now go do. But we don't have that conversation about what does it mean to be trusted, to be trustworthy, and what does success look like. We just throw people in the deep end, hope they do it, and then when they miss the mark and we're disappointed, we blame them and we withdraw trust. And that just doesn't make sense. That is why You, Me, We and Cultivate, my 2 books, go about trying to solve this gap.
Yeah, trust is such an important thing. And
Mm,
you alluded to trust but verify. And as a leader, and especially as a young leader, It's a very hard thing to do, to trust completely. And I learned specifically, maybe the hard way, that you have to do that. You absolutely have to do that. And when leaders demonstrated that in me, man, I'd go the extra mile for them all day long.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure we've all got people who took a chance on us, saw something in us that we didn't yet see in ourselves. And it goes back to, as leaders, it's the asking powerful questions. If your spidey sense is going off that, maybe we're not quite aligned, or I'm not quite sure that you know what I've asked you to do, then ask a question that says, "So, Dave, what are your first steps going to be?" Or, "Dave, what questions do you have for me before we go off and start this piece of work?" Don't wait for things to go off the rails. Seize the moment, have the conversation. And that leads to the next two practices. The first being courage and vulnerability. The courage to ask what might be perceived as the daft question, because I can assure you, if you've got a daft question in your head, somebody else is thinking it and going, "Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness Morag asked." But the courage and vulnerability to ask for help, to offer help, and to take help when it's provided. And then the candor and debate is the willingness to raise those tough issues and be part of the conversation, the debate part that follows. Don't just lob the candor grenade that, "Oh, that sucks, that'll never work," and then just sit back. You've got to be part of, and here's why, and here are the alternatives open to us.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the that sucks mentality, if you will, just for a moment here. And I'm going to talk about toxic bosses.
Ugh.
That's a real thing. There's a lot of data about that and what that does to organizational culture and just how horrible it is. But definitely want to get your take on that. But I just read something interesting that I hadn't really thought about. There's such a thing as what was referred to as toxic positivity.
Oh,
That
yeah.
person that's always the cheerleader, even when it's clear that things aren't good. Can you talk about both ends of the toxicity spectrum?
So, where do you want me to start? I mean, the toxic positivity is the little house on the prairie, let's skipping through the daisies, the rose tinted glasses. I mean, there's so many metaphors for it. And optimism, I mean, I'm a glass half full person. I can see a silver lining in most things, but you do have to couple it with the emotional intelligence, the empathy of, "Hey, I can see why that would suck. I can see why that is difficult. And hey, have you tried this, or how can we adapt?" So toxic positivity, we can't say that it's hard at the moment. There's strive to do more with less, and therefore I'm working two roles and I'm feeling overwhelmed and anxious. Well, buckle up, buttercup, and put a smile on your face isn't going to make that stress and anxiety go away. It's going to simmer below the surface and probably explode in an unhealthy way at some point in the future. So the best leaders I'm working with, we talked about creating time for small talk, that transition into meetings, even doing something like a one-word check-in at the start of a meeting. How are you feeling? I saw a leader do this. And in the chat, we saw, optimistic, happy, overwhelmed, stressed, confused, happy, whatever it might be. It was the full spectrum. And what that leader did in the moment, it wasn't, "Oh, Dave, you put overwhelmed, tell me about it," and put you on the spot. What they did do was that they then adjusted the agenda for the meeting to reflect the energy level, and then followed up privately with each leader to say, "Okay, what can I do in the next week to help you to navigate this period?" Because the thing is, I might be firing a Duracell bunny all excited this week. Next week, I'm the one that might be overwhelmed. So it's again, as a friend at work, it's the yin and yang and supporting each other as we need it.
Yeah, that's a really self-aware check-in that you just described on that part of that leader. Um, I guess in the same vein of offering advice, if you will, what's something that our audience can do today or tomorrow to create better workplace connections?
Intentionality. So in You, Me, We, Eric, Ruby, and I share our fairly straightforward 3-step process. The first one is to look up, to think about, how do I feel in this moment? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I tired? Have I, whatever it is, how am I feeling in this moment? Then show up is starting to look at the other side of that coin. How do I want others to feel in this conversation today, in this meeting? And then step up is the intentional choice of, okay, so where do I need to turn the dial up and where do I need to turn the dial down in order for this to be as successful as it can be? And it might be starting a conversation that says, you know what, I was up all night, the dog was sick, I'm a little tired, so just bear with me. Now everybody knows what's going on, as opposed to the quieter Morag, the tired Morag, and people writing a story that says, oh, something must be happening at work. Because the stories we write without that context are invariably personal and negative. So when we look up, show up, step up, it is a moment for us to make a choice that impacts, as you asked right at the beginning, our leadership reputation and our leadership impact in this moment. And at the end of the day, we can reflect on, did I do my best? And if my best today was a 6 out of 10 in terms of the energy tank, then go you. You did your best, and we are better together as a result of it.
Yeah, I love that. Be intentional and don't make any assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about this a lot. There are a lot of single parents. I was one, and if you show up late for work one day and somebody assumes that you were slacking, it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole different mindset than if they were like, "Oh, you had a sick kid and you had to get them to grandmom's house first, etc." Yeah, so
Yeah.
don't make any assumptions.
And it's challenging because if we've been told it's not personal, it's just business, or leave your emotions at home, as I was early in my career, or at least leave your work, personal life at home. If we aren't able to have the courage and vulnerability to walk through the door and say, hey, I've had a sick kid, because we've got to wear the professional work mask, then it's causing the very outcome, the misunderstandings that result in the label of toxic boss or a toxic colleague. And I can guarantee nobody gets up in the morning wanting to be that toxic boss or colleague. So one conversation at a time, that's how we start to affect change and start to be seen as the go-to colleague versus the slacker, as you described earlier.
Yeah, and unless we work on the severed floor, we're bringing that
Oh,
stuff with
yeah.
us.
I've just started watching that, so it's early stages for me.
You're going to love it. We're getting down to the end here, but before we have to wrap, Morag, I want to ask you just to talk a little bit about some of your other work. You talked about Cultivate a little bit at the top of the program. Tell the audience a little bit about your other work and where they can find it.
Well, you can learn more about me at our company website, SkyeTeam, SKYE team.com. And as I said earlier, I invite you all to take your ally mindset profile at skyeteam.cloud/you-me-we. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. It is me. I respond to all messages. I'm the one writing the articles and newsletters that you will find there. And our work, I am on a mission to create cultures of connection in a world of increasing disconnection. The secret to success in business is relationships, and the secret to success in life is connection. And these happen one conversation and one relationship at a time.
Really well said. And I just want to add the exclamation mark on the end of that. So thank you so much for joining us today and for having a great conversation.
My pleasure, Dave.
And thank you out there for tuning in to Behind the Numbers. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do take a moment, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Your feedback does help us grow and bring you even more great content. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode. Until next time, I'm Dave Bookbinder, reminding you that the numbers tell the story, but the people bring it to life. Take care, everybody.